It is now 1:06. So we're just going to begin. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jenny Lewis Charles. I'm the Patient Education Coordinator here at CINJ, and thank you for joining our Advanced Care Planning webinar. Just a few housekeeping items. Your attendance today is completely private to other attendees. No one will be able to see your face, your name, and any comments or questions will only be seen by myself as well as the other panelists, the other speakers. If you wish to ask a question, you can type it in the chat box at the lower part of your screen, or you can unmute at the end of both presentations to ask your questions. Again, all questions will be addressed at the end of both presentations. So this morning we have both our licensed clinical social workers, Rose Slajewski and Debbie Leaf, and our advanced practice nurse, Elsie Castoreo. Rose, Debbie, and Elsie, thank you for joining us this afternoon to discuss advanced care planning and how we can better prepare for our future. I will definitely turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jenny. And I think I need your permission to share my screen now. Thank you. So let me share my screen so that we can see the slides. And I apologize for any delay. I just want to make sure that we're seeing the right version of those slides here. Okay, so today what we're going to be talking about is planning for peace of mind. And ultimately what we're talking about is advanced care planning. So myself and Deb and Elsie will hopefully be able to give you some useful information. So as we start, first we want to look at what advanced care planning is. So advanced care planning is anything that you do that helps you or your family, friends, medical team, everybody who cares about you, know what your care plans are, what kind of care you want to receive. And advanced care planning includes, but isn't just limited to, informing yourself about the kinds of treatment that would be available to you and what what are options for your care, deciding what types of treatment you want or don't want to receive, sharing your personal values with those people who you love and who are close to you, especially what it means when you say quality of life. And we'll get into all of these things in a little bit more detail. And it can also mean completing an advance directive. So putting in writing what kind of options you want, what you don't want. It's important that this is not a one and done experience. You don't have advanced care planning experiences once during your care and then it's never brought up again. And advanced care planning can be formal or informal. So also, just a few statistics. So in the 1990 Patient Self-Determination Act, this is an act that it requires healthcare providers to talk to you and ask you if you have an advance directive. And it encourages everyone to decide ahead of time what kind of care they want, what kind of care they don't want, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable to them. Okay. So the Conversation Project, and we have listed them, the resources, they have a survey that says that 9 in 10 Americans feel that it's very important to discuss their wishes for end of life. However, saying that, only about 3 in 10 have actually had these discussions. So there is a study here, and you can see some of the particular information. But I think important takeaways is that nearly 37% had an advance directive. So almost 37% in this study of studies had an advance directive. And I think significant too is that there wasn't much difference in the percentage that were healthy who completed an advance directive and the percentage of people who had chronic illness. So you do not have to have chronic illness to do an advance directive. So for hospitalists, the current recommendation is that Doctors should engage with individuals who are 65 years or older, and not just single out those individuals who have a serious illness to discuss care needs and care options. And April 16th is recognized each year as National Health Care Decisions Day. So, contrary to what some people may believe, you don't need a lawyer to complete an advance directive. You do need to have your signature witnessed by 2 adults who are not your healthcare proxy. We'll get into that a little bit more detail. The one thing that's important here is to know that your spouse is your healthcare proxy. Typically, if you become divorced or legally separated, this will be revoked. But if you're not legally separated, the proxy remains as is. So if you haven't decided on a healthcare proxy, there's a priority or an algorithm, shows a list of the order of people who would be asked to make decisions for you if you have not designated this ahead of time. And this is the order. So this is why I said the spouse is typically the proxy, even if you haven't completed anything. So the spouse, partner in a civil union or domestic partner, if you're not legally separated, that's the first go-to person. The second would be an adult child, anyone over the age of 18. And in a couple of states, you have to be 19. I think it's Alabama and Nebraska. Next would be your parent, a sibling over the age of 18, a close friend. So it's important to know that if you don't do this ahead of time, there is an order that medical staff will go to see, what your care treatment should be like. And important to remember too, that it's a question of what you want and what you don't want as far as your care. And these two are equally important. It's not just, I want this, but it's important to express what your desires are about what you would not want. So when you choose a healthcare provider or a proxy, Deb's going to talk to you a little bit more about things that you need to know about that.
Hi, everyone. So going forward on what Rose started talking about. We're
I'm so
having
sorry.
technical difficulties.
I was trying to mute at the same time, and I apologize. We're on 5, sorry.
You still.
I can't mute.
Oops.
Oh,
Okay, sorry about that. So in talking more about things that are important to know, you'll see this first line, the who you choose as your healthcare proxy is important. Your proxy needs to be able to act on your wishes that may or may not be the person with whom you're closest. And what that means is that you can actually have someone, for example, who lives out of state. And you decide this is the person who you want to be your proxy. That's a possibility. You can also be a friend that you've had for years, not necessarily your spouse. So it's important that you kind of give a lot of thought into who's going to be your proxy. We're going to talk further later on in the presentation about that, so you have more examples. And then if you choose one of those people who may not be who you would expect, so like a spouse, a partner, a sibling, it's really important that everyone knows who the proxy is. So what I say to people is communicate, communicate, communicate. So important to have these discussions with your proxy as well as other people who are not your proxies. So in the third bullet, that's exactly what we're talking about. If it's an an unexpected person, then it certainly is important to be clear, honest, and simple when you're talking to them. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as well. All right. So now, in terms of conversations, it's very hard. No matter how close you are to someone, it's hard to have these kinds of conversations because it feels like they're very negative. The point we want to put out there to you, and something I also talk to my patients about, is that you're actually giving a gift to your family. What I mean is, by having this conversation and not leaving things up for them to decide it kind of at the toughest times in life when some loved one is sick, doing it ahead of time and being able to say, this is what I want, making it clear, will actually really help them in the time when it happens. One of the things that people say to me is, I don't want to burden my loved one. I think it's definitely understandable why people say that. But again, I want to just go back to that. This is actually something, having this conversation may actually open up some doors you didn't think existed in terms of sharing what you want. So on the slide, we suggest, these are just some suggestions, to say to someone, I need your help with something, to really be a general bringing in a conversation about this. The second one is one that I have found people have really liked, or as much as you can with difficult conversations. So I was thinking about what happened to Uncle Ralph, and it made me realize that there are things I want and don't want in my care. And then you can go there with that conversation. I need to think about the future. Will you help me? Another way to really get started on the conversation. There we are. Okay, so now this is a couple more specifics that we're putting out there for planning for the advanced care planning discussion you're going to have with your team. So these are things to get you thinking, how do I get more information about my treatment options? What would I want people to know so they can honor what I want and don't want? The more we can give you in terms of things to start with, that's what we wanted to put out there, and why these things are important, because it's hard to figure out how to work on what your advanced care plan is. One of the things I say to people also is just take a step back and breathe. When you're preparing to sit down and think about all of this, it's something that taking a step back will allow you to kind of settle yourself and be able to then think about anything that kind of pops into your head in a sense, and then you can process all that as you plan the next steps. So for example, write down 3 things you want your doctor, your family, friends to know about how you would like the end of your life to be. Putting it in writing always helps when you have to talk about something and ask questions to your doctor. And then knowing that there might be some roadblocks and pushback with what you've decided about a proxy, it's good to think ahead about the reasons of why you want to have that person as your proxy. Okay. So this is just an example. The Oncology Nursing Society actually put together this format. It's a sample, and it'll be on the slides if you get them after the presentation, because they're, I know, a little hard to read right now. But it really gets you thinking what matters to you most, what brings you happiness, what makes the day meaningful. It really allows you to take some time to think about things that make sense that you may not have even thought about before. And so this will help you get your mind kind of focused on things you like, which may help you then make decisions about your proxy and your living will, which we'll talk about more. And then this is for you to see. Again, I'm not sure if you can see it, it's a little small, but we wanted to pull apart the differences between advanced directive, the two parts of the advanced directive, which is the healthcare proxy and the living will, and a pulsed, which Elsie is going to be talking about in more detail, but this at least gives paper and actual words to looking and comparing all the two pieces, the three pieces.
So we're going to talk a little bit now about an advanced directive and the instruction directive. So the proxy directive is, this is where you select who's going to make medical decisions for you. This proxy, a proxy is somebody who stands in for you. That's what a proxy is. And so I think that one helpful way to look at it is that this is anything that an advanced directive is anything that you put in place ahead of time, that in advance, that says what your wishes would be. This is medical care wishes ahead of time, right? So anything that falls under that category is an advanced directive. But very often I get people who ask, what's the difference between an advanced directive and a living will? I'm sorry, you can't hear me?
Yeah.
I apologize. Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. So I do have individuals ask on a regular basis when I ask them if they have an advanced directive, what's the difference between an advanced directive and a living will? And so a living will are advanced directives that are very particular to end of life care. That's what a living will is. They do fit under the broad category of advanced directives, but an advanced directive doesn't have to indicate what your wishes are at end of life. But if you have a living will, it is a type of advanced directive that does talk about, it gives very specific information about your wishes are, what you want and what you don't want. It clarifies what life-sustaining treatment you would want, clarifies whether or not you would want CPR or artificial nutrition, clarifies what you think about brain death and whether or not that's acceptable to you, whole body donation. So a living will is very specific to end of life care, but not all advanced directives are living wills. And again, the proxy form is the form that says, this is who my proxy is. This is the person who speaks for me in the event I can't speak for myself. Now, these two that you see here, the web addresses in blue, these are at the state website. So you can download and print a proxy directive from the state website that's listed, and you can also download and print an instruction directive or instructive directive. And we encourage people to complete both of those. There's also some wonderful information at those websites about frequently asked questions and things like that. And we will discuss some of the things you would see there, but there's additional information there we haven't put here in the presentation.
You're muted, Rose.
How did I become muted? Sorry about that. So just a couple of definitions that I think these can be confusing to people, and I've had people ask me these questions directly. So what does it mean when they say life-sustaining treatment? What exactly does that mean? So these are treatments that increase life expectancy or help you to live longer by restoring or taking over body functions that are considered vital, that if you did not have that life-sustaining treatment, and sometimes that's a machine, sometimes it's medication, it might be a breathing tube, or artificially provided nutrition or fluids. So these are types of life-sustaining treatment. I think key here is that without this treatment, you would be experiencing a natural death. That's what they mean by life-sustaining, is that without them, since these are vital functions. So then the next one is, what is the definition of permanently unconscious? So being permanently unconscious has the meaning that you have permanently lost the ability to interact with your environment, that you're unaware of your surroundings, that you are not conscious. And there are levels of unconsciousness, but being permanently unconscious is a term used for when there is not expected for you to come back from that place. The definition of terminal condition, this means the final stage of a fatal illness. We can have a terminal illness and be in the acute phase, but still not be in the final stages of that disease or condition. So to be in a terminal condition, you don't have to have a diagnosis of a limited amount of time. Very frequently we hear 6 months or less because that's sort of the parameters for hospice, but you do not have to fit into that parameter in order for this to have a terminal condition. Okay, some frequently asked questions. We thought this was another thing that was important to review. Okay, so it's very important to realize that assigning someone as your proxy doesn't mean that you lose your decision-making rights. You don't lose your decision-making rights. It is only the case that your proxy, automatically takes over if you have become unable to understand your diagnosis, unable to understand your treatment options or the possible benefits or harms of utilizing those treatment options. So, and a physician has to evaluate this. It can't be the proxy who says, oh, I don't think they're able to make their own decisions. This has to be evaluated by a physician. So you have the right to make your own decisions until you are evaluated to no longer be have capacity or be capable of making your own decisions or be competent to make your own decisions. So what happens if I regain my ability to make my own decisions? Then you go back to making your own decisions, and your healthcare providers have to come to you if you regain that ability. That's why very frequently we say, look, an advance directive is not for when you're terminally ill. It can be a temporary situation where you're unable to make your own decisions because you're anesthetized or you're unconscious for some reason that has to do with an accident or something like that. Okay. Who should have a copy of my advance directive? Well, basically everybody who's involved in the document itself and in your healthcare should have a copy. So that means your proxy should have a copy. Whether or not you have any alternates, they should have copies. Your medical representative, your medical care provider should have copies. And I encourage people to keep a copy in like the glove box of their car in case they're hospitalized for some reason. So anybody who's involved in your care should get a copy. Can you change or cancel them? Yes, you can. You can change them at any time when it comes to an advance directive. You just need to complete a new one and sign and date it with the 2 witnesses like you did previously. And therefore you would have it effectively changed. Can you cancel your advance directive? Yes, you can. You can cancel it. And you need to make sure that when you're doing that, you tell your physician, you tell your family members, your healthcare representative, the people who are providing you with care. You have to tell them that you're changing it or that you're canceling it. I just want to emphasize here, because it seems like probably a decent place to do it, that these documents are only as good as the conversations that happen regarding them. It does you no good to have these conversations and not inform your family members or talk with your family members about what you want, especially if your decisions change or if you have second thoughts. Or if something becomes different in how you're dealing with life. These conversations have to be, again, they're not one and done. They have to be something that we need to learn to be somewhat comfortable with, because all of us, at some point are going to receive some serious care for the most part. Most of us will, and all of us will have, end of life care, whatever that looks like, because that is an eventual, that's an inevitable experience, of life is dying. So those are some frequently asked questions, and you might have other ones, which hopefully we'll get to address if you do indeed have them. We're going to be going through this particular advanced directive. This is not the state website one, because that one is kind of hard to go through in a Zoom format. This is a perfectly appropriate advanced directive for the state of New Jersey from Prepare for Your Care. And that resource is listed in our resources at the end. But Deb is going to walk us through the first portion.
All right, so there's two parts, if you noticed in the slides from before, two parts to an advanced directive, the healthcare proxy, and then the living well piece. So I'm going to talk about the healthcare proxy, or medical decision maker. Again, these are going to be in slides, so you will be able to see them in case these are a little too small. I know we don't have a ton more time, so I'm going to race through. Just one thing I do want to point out is this talks about how to decide or how to choose a good medical decision maker. So it lists out things that you may want to consider. So someone you trust to follow your wishes and do what is best for you, trust to understand your medical information. These are things that might help you decide who you would like to ask to be your decision maker when you're unable to make your decisions. So this is a great place to start. And then it really lays out what the proxy will be able to make decisions about if you can. So it's really very clear on that. And then the last page is where you sign. Again, you don't need a notary. You can have witnesses, but those two witnesses cannot be 2 or 3 if you put them in options. They cannot be the decision makers. So the proxy can't be the witness for the paperwork. And then this last piece, I would definitely recommend you take a look at, because it gives you, I think, a little bit more control. It's talking about the flexibility. So how much power the decision maker has in terms of very specific things you want and don't want. I want to make sure to point that out. There it goes.
You're
Okay,
muted, Rose.
so we're going to go through the next portion of this, which is the instruction portion. And again, we have to go through somewhat quickly, but I think it's really helpful to look at the information that's here and see what it's asking. So it's asking, how would you want to make medical decisions? Do you want to make it with input from others, or would you prefer to make it without the input of other people, or would you prefer to defer your medical decision-making rights to someone else, right? Having other people make the decisions for you. And then the next part is really talking about quality of life issues, right? What brings you joy? What is it that you're focusing on? What do you value in life that brings quality, right? So is it your loved ones, companion animals, doing what you enjoy, like hobbies, working or volunteer work, being independent, perhaps not being a burden? That's kind of a big one for a lot of folks. Your spiritual or religious beliefs, or something maybe that's not mentioned here. But the goal here is to get you to really think about, what does quality of life mean to you? And if it was missing, what would that mean as far as your care, right? So, and then end of life care, right? We're talking about end of life care. Now, how you feel about your current health condition, not so end of life care notwithstanding, let's just say we're talking about regular health concerns in your current state of health today. What choice would you make about whether or not to live as long as possible or to have quality? And that's a continuum, right? Now, those decisions may be a little bit different at the end of life. You might decide something different now while your quality of life is good. And then as if you had a serious illness and you were declining, how might those change right on that continuum? So that's what's really being focused on here. And then on page 9, what we're talking about here is there anything at the end of life that would be unacceptable for you to experience? And there's a list of things here that would be basically, these are unacceptable, right? Also, in conjunction with that is, if you were dying of a serious illness, where would you want that to happen? Where would you want to be, whether at home or in a hospital or someplace else? And you may not be sure about that, but this form is asking you to think about it, ahead of time, in large part to protect those who you love from having to make decisions that would be very difficult for them to make without your input. And then how does the quality of life affect your medical care? Well, you have to make a decision, you know, and this is not necessarily an easy decision, but that's why it's important to be in partnership with another person or family members or your medical team to be talking about this. Would you want people to try absolutely everything to keep you alive? Would you want your medical team to try things for a prescribed amount of time, and if it didn't work, to be able to stop? Or do you not want to have life-sustaining treatment at all? And you have the right to make those decisions. Okay, organ donation tends not to be an option for some people because of their diagnosis, but it certainly is still an option for other people. And so think about whether or not you want to donate your organs or your body, and whether or not you want to have an autopsy. And just understand that you may or may not have the ability to make a decision about, you know, sometimes an autopsy or is required in certain circumstances. So you might not have any control over that. I will say that it's very important to acknowledge if there are very special considerations, whether those are religious considerations or spiritual wishes, or there are different considerations that somebody might have if they were pregnant. Okay, so I think that that's probably where we should leave off. We want to make sure that Elsie has enough time to talk. But the last page, actually, I'm going to go back just one. When you sign this in front of 2 witnesses, it's legal. Those witnesses cannot be, as we said before, they can't be the decision maker. They also can't be somebody who's working. So you can't have a proxy who's somebody who's working in a medical facility that you are a patient at. So that's not, you can't have somebody who's a proxy who works in a medical facility that you're, you know, where you're a patient. And then again, these forms are only as good as who sees them and how much they're discussed, and people understand what your wishes are. On the back here is a wallet card. I will say that this wallet card is courtesy of the National Institute on Aging and was kind of stuck in there. I'm sorry, it's crooked, that's my fault. But this might be something to think about, is whether or not you want to carry a wallet card to explain that you have an advance directive and that you want it followed, that you want people to pay attention. Here are some resources. They're very useful resources. This is not an exhaustive list, but any one of these places will help you sort of get started with thinking about your advance directive and how to have conversations. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And is somebody wanting to ask a question?
We're just going to save the questions until the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think perhaps we'll go to Elsie's portion first.
Yes.
And then we'll ask questions at the very end. I want to make sure Elsie has time. Elsie, you're up.
Thank you.
We can't hear you. Can you hear?
Elsie, you can begin.
Okay. Hi, everyone. And Jenny, you're managing the slides, correct? So we're gonna talk about POLST. And the POLST stands for Practitioner Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. It was originally developed in Oregon in 1990. And in New Jersey, it was signed into law by Governor Christie as of 2011. The POLST form is currently in use in 50 states. So the POLST identifies the type of medical treatment that an individual wishes towards the end of life. It's created on a brightly colored green form, and it's signed by either the doctor or the advanced practice provider. The POLST can prevent unwanted medically ineffective treatment and reduce the patient family's suffering and help to ensure that the patient's wishes are honored. So what are the differences between the advance directive and the POLST? Well, the advance directive are statements of the patient intention, not medical orders. The advance directive is initiated once the patient has lost their decision-making capacity. Advance directives are interpreted by the healthcare providers into medical orders in order to become active. And advance directives are appropriate for anyone over 18. So the POLST is for anyone with an advanced illness. Once a POLST is put into place, those medical orders are immediately actionable and no interpretation is needed. It complements the advance directive, but does not totally replace it. And it can be generated by either the doctor or an advanced practice provider with the patient or the surrogate decision maker. So if there's a conflict between the advance directive and the POLST, you would have a conversation with your provider. And if there is a crisis, you should be using the most recent document, whether it's an advance directive or POLST. So why was the POLST developed? It was developed to provide that patients, the treatments patients did want and avoid those treatments that patients did not want. So this is the POLST form. And it is recommended to, it is not recommended to complete all sections. If a section is not completed, it is considered to be a choice of full treatment for that section. So we're going to go through each section. So we have Section A, Goals of Care. And this is what is most important to you as you deal with advanced illness. It's not considered part of the medical order set. The plan is the plan trying to achieve cure, longevity, remission? Is the goal to live as long as possible in comfort, long enough to attend an event, Healthcare providers are encouraged to share the information regarding the prognosis in order for the individual to set realistic goals. So section B are medical interventions. And once again, the choices are full treatment, which there's no limitation on medical interventions. Could be intensive care unit, possible intubation, if the individual is in a nursing facility, possibly transferred to the hospital if indicated. The resuscitation status is something that is indicated in section D, which we'll go over. Limited treatment is antibiotics, IV fluids, oxygen. Generally, you're avoiding an intensive care unit, and if you would specify whether you would want to be transferred to the hospital. Continuing with section B in medical interventions, the option could be symptom treatment only, where you're just focused on comfort and relieving pain or providing medication, oxygen, wound care. It also includes relieving spiritual, emotional, and psychological suffering, and possible transferring to the hospital only if you cannot obtain comfort in the current setting. In section C, artificially administered fluids and nutrition, we always want to encourage fluids by mouth, if at all possible. If not, the option would be to have a tube or an IV, or either one of those can just be on a trial basis as well. Okay, so in section D, we're looking at, on the right side, we're looking at airway management. And the person is having difficulty breathing, but has a pulse. So the choices would be to intubate or using artificial ventilation, do not intubate using oxygen, or to have a trial period of mechanical ventilation. So the reason why you would maybe trial this is because it would give you additional time to assess what is actually happening and whether it would be short-term. And if it was short-term, it would provide some comfort at that point. Okay. All right, so moving on to section E.
Oh, sorry, you just skipped on the left side.
Okay, thank you. So in section D, the left side, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR. Person has no pulse and is not breathing. So the choices would be to attempt resuscitation, CPR, do not attempt resuscitation and allow a natural death. If you check the option for CPR here, then you are selecting full treatment in section B, which is the medical interventions. Okay. So section E is completed only if the patient has decision-making capacity. So the patient is giving permission for their decision maker to modify or revoke the post orders. So that modification is done in collaboration with the physician or advanced practice provider. You also want to discuss with the patient any prior existence of a healthcare proxy or representative in the advance directive. You want to, if there is a designated person, you want to carry that over to the post form. Section F is for signatures of the patient or the designated decision maker, also the physician or advanced practice provider. New Jersey Pulse specifics. There's two sides to the Pulse form, so both need to be completed. The original green Pulse stays with the patient. And when copying for medical records, you want to do, you want to copy on both sides as well. And some key points. Filling out this form is voluntary. Having a conversation with the individual about end of life is important and necessary and part of good medical care. And doctors and advanced practice providers are responsible for the final clarification of these preferences and documentation of the appropriate orders on the post form. So this, as I said earlier, the post form is on green paper. It stays with the individual at all times. If the patient is in a facility and is transferred, it goes with him or her. And at home, that green form should be in a visible location and found easily by emergency medical personnel. So the pulse can be modified or revoked at any time verbally or in writing. Changes can be made by individuals who are legally recognized, the surrogate decision maker, proxy, in collaboration with the doctor or advanced practice provider. And for providers, it's a good practice to review that pulse form when the individual is transferred from one setting to another, if there's a change in the health status, or if there are, or the treatment preferences change. So in conclusion, the POST is a medical order form that empowers individuals to detail their personal wishes. It translates the intentions found in an advance directive into an actionable order that every member of the healthcare team understands and respects those choices. Your quality of life during advanced illness should be totally under your control.
So this is just a complete listings of all the states who are using Pulse. We do have a video link on YouTube, but because of time, we will just move forward to questions. The presentations will be sent to everyone at the end of this webinar. And so now we're just going to move over to questions.
Oh, this is Rose. I'm going to answer one question relatively quickly. There was a question about what the FID is, what the FID number is, and that is on that is on the Prepare for Your Care form. And the FID number is a number that if you choose to use a notary to make this legal, the notary has that number. So that's very particular to if you use a notary. So I hope that that answers the question. It's not something that you need. You don't need that number if you use witnesses to make the document legal. So then there were a few questions in the chat about the proxy. So the proxy should have, so the person, the individual who's completed the proxy, they should have the original, okay? And then other people should have copies. I don't know of a database where all proxies are kept. That's not something that I'm aware of. And I think the question about whether or not a post is the same as a healthcare proxy, I think that was probably answered by Elsie. I will say though, I'll take this opportunity to say that the post form is one that, because it's signed by the doctor, it has the force of a doctor's order. So wherever the patient is, that form is in force. That is not the case with an advance directive. The advance directive, if you are at home and you've completed an advance directive and the EMTs are called out to your house, they do not have to and will not follow what's in an advance directive or verbal instructions from your proxy if there is not a post form. The advance directive is more for being in facilities. And then there's another question here about whether or not a copy is just as good as the original. And it is. You don't have to take the original someplace with you, but you should have the original at home. And copies can be provided to your healthcare providers. Then there is a question of whether or not New Jersey has a right to die provision. And there is something in New Jersey called medical aid in dying. And that is a law that is a few years old. And so New Jersey does have the medical aid in dying provision. We don't actually have time to really go into that in detail, but it can be, answers about that can be obtained, from various places, or, call and speak with the social worker who can provide some basic information about that. And then there is also a request for whether or not you'll be receiving the presentation, and you will. Are there any questions that I have not yet addressed?
I am giving everyone the option to unmute themselves, so feel free to unmute and you can ask the question.
Okay, there is one more I see in the chat, and that is who can do a power of attorney. And so you don't need a lawyer. Like I said, we can, and anybody can do a power of attorney, like for yourself, who can do a medical power of attorney. We're talking about only a medical power of attorney. We're not talking about a power of attorney for financial issues. We're talking about a medical power of attorney. You do have to be an adult to, I think that there are maybe different provisions for people who are under the age of 18 as to what can and can't be on a proxy form. I hope that answers the questions in the chat.
Could you repeat again? You're saying what would be observed and respected by EMTs arriving at your house? So you're saying
The
that
post
they,
form,
only
the
the
post form.
post. Okay.
Only the post form. See, because it's signed by the doctor and by the patient, which means it has the force of a doctor's order.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, or an APN could have signed it, but it still has the force of a medical order. So it's not issued. So the issue, I think, and I'm just going to speak from what I think is the case. It's somewhat anecdotal, but the advanced directive form, especially the one for the state of New Jersey, when you look at it and you look at the instruction directive, part of the language is if my doctor and another doctor who has examined me have determined that I have a terminal condition, well, there are no doctors in the house. And so the EMS folks don't have medical information to go by in the house. So that they don't, and since we're saying that you can have a temporary issue that would require you to use a proxy or have somebody make decisions for you, the EMTs are tasked to do everything necessary to save your life in the absence of very specific end of life instructions on a post form. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? David?
Yeah, a stupid question. Where do you put the post to make sure they see it?
The refrigerator is where a lot of people say to put it.
Okay.
Put it on. That's not a stupid question. I think that people want to make sure if you've gone through the work of thinking about what you want and talking with your medical providers about what you want and your family about what you want that document to be seen.
Okay.
Sometimes it's, oh. You know what,
I'll mute. No, I'll mute.
So sometimes it's hard for people to have the paper, the pulse out. But it's really important. This is why the communication with family and your proxy is really important. So they understand why the green piece of paper is out on the fridge is a very common one. But I just want you to think that and understand why the communication even more so is so important. With everything we've said, but also specifically even more so with the pulse. Does that make sense?
Okay. We also have another question. Are ACD binding on family legally? Advanced directive binding on family legally?
Well, it is a legal document. It's a legal document. That's why, to be honest with you, it's most important that you select somebody who is going to advocate for your wishes. That you know when you select someone, that you have selected somebody who knows you, who hears you, you know, and this might not be somebody you've known for a long time, but if you trust them to advocate for your wishes, it should be kept. It is a legal document. It's signed legally by 2 witnesses. Lawrence?
Hi. So in my case, I cannot donate any organ to for organ donations, but I wonder if how to check if I can give to research.
Yeah, so they're in every state, I believe it's in every state, you can look and see whether or not you meet the necessary requirements, and you can reach out ahead of time to find out about whole body donation. And whole body donation, Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital does have a program, and you can go on the website and find out about it. And there are a number of documents that you can look at that will help you decide whether or not that's an appropriate choice for you.
Thank you.
And then you have another question. If a patient has dementia before the forms are completed, what happens?
Then the opportunity to complete those forms is unfortunately, you don't have that option. Right, so if somebody is not competent to sign the form, then they're actually not competent to select. And so this is where I would encourage people to seek legal advice. You don't need a lawyer to complete these forms, but some people do reach out to lawyers, and that may be a very appropriate situation to reach out to a lawyer. If there is documented dementia and there's question about the person's capacity or competency, then that question makes it impossible to in good faith complete an advanced directive or a post form. So that's in those situations I would advise people to seek legal help.
We have a hand raised for
Jenny,
Janine.
Jenny, just
Hi, everyone. So,
I just need to
if
say
you
again,
have,
this is why it's so.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's just, this is a perfect example of why it's so important to have these conversations early, not after someone, medical things are starting or age is becoming an issue. So I just want to reinforce having these discussions, how important they are.
Okay.
Hi.
Janine.
Janine?
yes, hi. So question, let's say you have a person who has children and is married. They select a proxy that is neither one of those options. You have the witnesses. Would you ever advise that that document be notarized just to enforce it? Or what would you recommend in a circumstance like that?
Well, I don't want to offer legal advice, but my own recommendation, like if it was me or my family member, I would encourage getting that notarized. It's just a second layer, that second layer to try to reinforce that. But if there is real concern about whether or not it's going to be followed, again, this might be the right time and place to seek legal advice, just in case there's some very profound concern that it maybe won't be followed. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, just a few more questions because we are a little bit past time. But I'm confused by the pulse that a doctor can override an advance directive wishes.
Okay, Elsie,
Sure,
are you still on, Elsie?
I am. So the question is that a doctor can override, they're asking, can a doctor override it?
Yeah, can a doctor override an advance directive wishes
No,
through the pulse?
no. The physician has to, if there's a decision maker there who's speaking on behalf of the patient, then that decision maker is representing the patient. And if the patient has requests, if the doctor can have the discussion, but if the patient put what their requests were on the pulse, then the physician will have to honor what's on the post form.
Yeah, we have 2 more hands up and then we'll be closing out. Annabelle, you can unmute. Anna, okay. No, okay, so Grace, you can go.
Thank you. I just want to clarify. So a power of attorney would be for non-medical decision making, more financial, and
So
the
there's,
directive would be just for the medical wishes.
so there is, when we talk about a proxy directive, we are talking about what is called the proxy directive is often considered a power of attorney for healthcare issues. It's just another term sometimes used for it, power of attorney for healthcare issues. But it differs from a legal power of attorney, which would give the person power of attorney over things other than healthcare issues, things like finances and stuff like that, where we haven't talked about those. But one of the things about a proxy directive is that it's sometimes called a durable power of attorney for healthcare. So I'm sorry if that's a little bit confusing, but you want to make sure if you're completing an advance directive or a power of attorney that you are very clear if you're completing one for healthcare or one for a general power of attorney, which encompasses more.
Okay, and just last question, can a judge override an advance directive?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
That is really a legal question that, quite frankly, I'm just not, we're not qualified to answer that question.
Okay, and then Janine, I see you have your hand raised again. I don't know if it's from the previous question.
It's from the previous.
Okay. All right. I'm not too sure if there's any more questions.
There is something here about putting up the slide that says the order of decision makers in a proxy. I think that due to time, I'm just going to say you
Yeah.
are going to get these slides, but the order, if I can just verbally give it to you, it's going to be, the first is going to be a spouse or domestic partner, something along those lines, somebody that you are legally married to or joined with. The second order would be an adult child, and then it goes parents. Okay, so I think then after that it's siblings So, but you will get that slide when you get the slides.
Correct. And we just have a comment. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very useful and I agree with the attendees. Thank you, Rose, Debbie, and Elsie. Thank you for presenting this afternoon and thank you for the attendees who joined. A little quick survey that takes less than 5 minutes will be automatically populated after this webinar ends. If you could just please fill it out just to help us out with future events and also just to give us feedback on this event as well and any events you would like to see in the future. And also an email will be sent. And again, the presentation will be sent as a follow-up email, and you can also find all our past events that we had here at CINJ on our CINJ.org website, and that will also be linked in the email. So thank you everyone for joining and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you,
you.
Elsie. Thank you.